The enigmatic Sigma male, a figure who walks alone in a world full of connections, yet seems unbothered by his solitude. Welcome to Why Sigma Men Don't Have Anyone in Their Lives, a deep exploration into the psychology and lifestyle choices that leave these powerful, independent men seemingly isolated from meaningful relationships. Before we dive into this fascinating journey through the Sigma mindset, I want to address you directly. Yes, you watching this video right now. If you've ever felt like you don't quite fit into conventional social hierarchies, if you value your independence above all else, or if you're simply curious about this increasingly discussed male archetype, you've found your intellectual home. Subscribe to Official Sigma Male right now to access our complete library of content designed to help you understand, embrace, and optimize your Sigma tendencies. Your journey of self-discovery deserves the most authentic guidance available. Let's begin by dismantling the misconceptions and revealing the truth behind the Sigma man's solitary existence. Is it a choice, a consequence, or perhaps something far more nuanced? Strategic solitude. The solitude of a Sigma male isn't random or accidental, it's strategic. Unlike the social isolation that stems from rejection or inadequacy, the Sigma's solitude is deliberately cultivated and maintained. It serves specific purposes in his life journey. Sigmas understand that true mental clarity often comes in moments of solitude. The constant social stimulation that many crave actually creates noise that drowns out deeper insights. Consider Marcus, a software architect who deliberately lives in a cabin outside the city, only coming in for essential meetings. His colleagues wonder why someone so talented isolates himself. What they don't see is that his groundbreaking innovations come from the mental space his solitude provides. This strategic withdrawal extends beyond mere physical isolation. Sigmas practice emotional solitude as well, keeping parts of themselves deliberately unavailable, even to those they interact with regularly. They create psychological distance that allows them to observe, analyze, and navigate social ecosystems without becoming entangled in them. The Sigma's approach to relationships is similarly strategic. They value quality over quantity, depth over breadth. While others collect connections like badges of social proof, the Sigma cultivates only those relationships that offer genuine value exchange. This selective approach naturally results in fewer connections, but those that exist tend to be remarkably profound. However, strategic solitude comes with its costs. The same distance that provides clarity can eventually transform into a barrier, one that becomes increasingly difficult to dismantle when genuine connection is desired. This creates the first paradox of the Sigma existence. The very approach that empowers their independent lifestyle eventually becomes the obstacle to meaningful companionship. The emotional independence paradox. Emotional independence is perhaps the most defining characteristic of the Sigma male. Unlike their alpha counterparts who draw energy and validation from their position in social hierarchies, or beta types who seek external validation through service to others, Sigmas generate their emotional stability internally. This self-contained emotional ecosystem creates what I call the emotional independence paradox. The more a Sigma develops his capacity for emotional self-reliance, the less he requires external emotional support. Yet simultaneously, this very self-sufficiency makes him increasingly unrelatable to most potential partners, who expect and desire mutual emotional interdependence. Take James, a successful freelance journalist who travels the world covering in conflict zones. His ability to process trauma, make decisions under pressure, and maintain his center in chaos stems from his exceptional emotional independence. But when he returns home and attempts dating, he consistently faces the same feedback. "You don't seem to need me." His potential partners sense correctly that while he might want their company, he doesn't need their emotional support in the way they're accustomed to providing it. This creates a selection filter where only individuals with similar levels of emotional independence can truly understand and complement a Sigma's emotional landscape. Yet such individuals are, by definition, rare and often similarly uninterested in conventional relationships. The paradox deepens when we consider that emotional independence isn't absolute. Even the most self-reliant Sigma experiences moments of vulnerability, doubt, and need. The difference lies in how these moments are processed, internally rather than externally. But this internal processing can become habitual to the point of reflexive, causing Sigmas to automatically redirect emotional needs inward even when healthier options for external support exist. Over time, this pattern can calcify into emotional isolation that's no longer strategic but automatic, a defense mechanism rather than a conscious choice. Breaking this pattern requires exceptional self-awareness and intentional vulnerability, qualities that don't come easily to those who've mastered emotional self-reliance. Value systems and incompatibility. The core values that drive a Sigma male often exist in direct opposition to mainstream relationship expectations. This value divergence creates fundamental incompatibilities that go beyond personality differences or communication styles. They represent entirely different operating systems for life. At the center of the Sigma value system is personal sovereignty. While many pay lip service to concepts like freedom and autonomy, the Sigma builds his entire existence around these principles. This isn't merely about avoiding control by others, it's about maintaining complete ownership of one's decisions, time, and life direction. Consider Eric, a highly sought-after consultant who rejects lucrative partnership offers from prestigious firms. His colleagues see his choices as self-sabotage, but Eric values his ability to choose his projects, methods, and schedule more than financial security or professional status. This same pattern extends to his romantic life. Potential partners who begin making claims on his future plans or time allocation quickly discover his polite but firm boundaries. The Sigma's value hierarchy typically places self-actualization above social validation. Unlike alphas, who derive significance from their position in dominance hierarchies, or socially oriented individuals who measure themselves through their connections, Sigmas evaluate themselves against internal standards of excellence and authenticity. This creates a fundamental misalignment with the reciprocity expected in conventional relationships. Another crucial value differential appears in the Sigma's relationship with truth versus harmony. Most social structures, including romantic relationships, operate on principles that sometimes prioritize harmony over brutal honesty. The Sigma, however, typically values truth-seeking above social comfort. This creates inevitable friction when potential partners expect the small compromises and white lies that oil the machinery of typical relationships. This value's incongruence creates a selection problem. The Sigma male isn't compatible with most potential partners, not because of superficial differences, but because of fundamentally different operating principles. The partners who would be most compatible are themselves rare, often similarly independent, and frequently engaged in their own pursuits rather than actively seeking connection. Perhaps most tellingly, When Sigmas do attempt to compromise these values for relationship harmony, the results are typically disastrous, leading to resentment, identity crisis, and eventual relationship collapse. This reinforces the belief that their solitude isn't just a preference, but a necessary condition for their authentic existence. Social dynamics and selection criteria. The Sigma male's navigation of social landscapes follows distinctly different patterns from more conventional male archetypes. These unique social dynamics create both opportunities and significant barriers when it comes to forming lasting connections. Unlike alphas, who naturally command attention and often have potential partners gravitating toward them, or betas, who actively seek connection through various social channels, Sigmas operate with a fundamentally different approach. They typically maintain a position at the periphery of social circles, present but not centered, engaged but not invested, connected but not dependent. This peripheral positioning severely limits the Sigma's exposure to potential compatible partners. While others actively broadcast their availability and participate in the conventional mating dance, Sigmas often remain invisible to all except the most perceptive observers. Their quiet confidence and self-containment can be easily mistaken for disinterest or unavailability. Take Michael, a talented musician who attends industry events but typically stands observing from the corner, engaging in deep conversation with one or two people rather than working the room. His approach means he connects meaningfully with only a fraction of the people he might potentially meet. The quality of these connections is exceptional, but the quantity is necessarily limited. The Sigma's selection criteria compound this challenge. Where others might prioritize conventional attractiveness, social compatibility, or shared interests, Sigmas typically evaluate potential partners on deeper traits: intellectual independence, emotional self-sufficiency, authentic self-expression, and congruence between words and actions. These criteria dramatically reduce the pool of compatible partners. Furthermore, Sigmas often demonstrate a peculiar blindness to conventional social signals. While they may possess exceptional insight into human nature at a macro level, they frequently miss or dismiss the subtle indicators of interest or availability that facilitate initial connections. This isn't due to social awkwardness, but rather to their fundamental disinterest in social games and performative behaviors. Perhaps most significantly, Sigmas typically refuse to participate in the implicit transaction that underlies many conventional relationships, the exchange of autonomy for intimacy. Where most relationship models require some surrender of individual sovereignty to build partnership, Sigmas resist this trade-off, seeking connections that enhance rather than constrain their freedom. This combination of peripheral social positioning, stringent selection criteria, missing conventional signals, and resistance to autonomy for intimacy exchanges creates a perfectly engineered system for maintaining solitude, even when the Sigma might genuinely desire connection. The self-sufficiency. Trap self-sufficiency stands as both the Sigma male's greatest strength and his most significant barrier to meaningful connection. This paradoxical dynamic creates what I call the self-sufficiency trap, a pattern that reinforces isolation even when it's no longer serving the Sigma's ultimate well-being. The trap begins with the Sigma's exceptional capacity for self-reliance. From practical skills to emotional regulation, from financial independence to psychological resilience, the typical Sigma builds a comprehensive ecosystem of self-sufficiency. This capacity serves him well in countless scenarios, enabling him to navigate life's challenges with minimal external support. Consider Daniel, a self-taught engineer who built his own off-grid homestead. He generates his own power, grows much of his food, maintains his equipment, and solves complex problems without calling in specialists. This practical self-sufficiency extends to his emotional and social life. He processes setbacks internally, entertains himself, and generates his own sense of meaning and purpose. The trap solidifies as this self-sufficiency becomes an identity rather than merely a capability. What begins as "I can handle things alone" subtly transforms into "I am the kind of person who handles things alone." This identity-level commitment to self-reliance makes accepting help or admitting need feel like a threat to self-concept rather than a normal human experience. As this pattern deepens, the Sigma's capacity for receiving begins to atrophy. While he excels at giving, offering insight, solving problems, providing strength, the neural pathways for gracefully accepting what others offer grow weaker through disuse. This creates an asymmetry in potential relationships where balanced exchange becomes increasingly difficult. The trap reaches its peak when the Sigma's self-sufficiency creates a feedback loop of isolation. His self-reliance makes others feel unnecessary, which reduces meaningful connection opportunities, which in turn reinforces his need for self-sufficiency. The cycle becomes self-perpetuating and increasingly difficult to break. Perhaps most insidiously, the self-sufficiency trap eventually convinces the Sigma that his isolation is entirely by choice rather than partially by circumstance. The narrative becomes, "I prefer to be alone," rather than "I've optimized my life for independence and am now experiencing the natural consequences of that optimization." Breaking free from this trap requires something antithetical to the Sigma's natural inclinations, deliberate conscious vulnerability, and an admission of the universal human need for connection. Until this threshold is crossed, the self-sufficiency that empowers the Sigma in countless areas of life will continue to undermine his capacity for deep and lasting relationships, prioritizing purpose over partnership. The Sigma male's relationship with his life's purpose creates another fundamental barrier to conventional partnership. Unlike those who might adjust their life direction to accommodate a relationship, the Sigma typically organizes his existence around his central mission, making little room for compromises that might dilute his focus or effectiveness. This purpose-centric approach begins with the Sigma's unusual relationship to meaning, where many derive significant life satisfaction from their social connections and relationships. The Sigma finds his primary sense of meaning in his work, creative pursuits, intellectual development, or personal mission. This creates a fundamentally different value hierarchy, where partnership is, at best, a secondary priority. Take Thomas, a documentary filmmaker who spends months embedded in conflict zones, documenting human rights abuses. His work demands total immersion, irregular schedules, physical danger, and emotional intensity. When potential partners express interest, they quickly discover that his work will always take precedence over relationship convenience or conventional milestones. This prioritization manifests in practical ways that make conventional relationships nearly impossible. From unpredictable availability to geographical flexibility, from irregular working hours to intense focus periods, the purpose-driven Sigma creates a life structure that few potential partners can adapt to, much less thrive within. Beyond these practical considerations lies a deeper philosophical stance. The Sigma typically believes that his contribution to the world through his purpose is more valuable than his participation in conventional social structures, including romantic partnerships. This isn't necessarily ego-driven. It often stems from a genuine commitment to excellence and impact in his chosen domain. This purpose-first orientation creates a selection filter where only partners who either share the same purpose or who have their own equally compelling mission can truly understand and respect the Sigma's priorities. Such individuals are, by definition, rare and often similarly unavailable for conventional relationships. Perhaps most significantly, the purpose-driven Sigma often experiences fulfillment levels that make the relative benefits of partnership less compelling. Where others might feel an emptiness that drives them toward connection, the Sigma's cup is already filled by his engagement with his mission. This doesn't eliminate the human need for intimacy, but it significantly reduces the motivation to make the compromises necessary to cultivate it. This creates yet another paradox. The Sigma's dedication to purpose makes him exceptionally interesting and attractive to many, yet simultaneously unavailable to most. His clarity, passion, and direction draw others toward him, even as these same qualities ensure he remains fundamentally alone in his journey, breaking through walls of detachment. The Sigma male's characteristic emotional detachment serves as both shield and prison, protecting him from manipulation and superficial entanglements, while simultaneously blocking the vulnerability necessary for profound connection. Breaking through these walls represents perhaps the most challenging aspect of the Sigma's journey toward meaningful relationship. This detachment isn't simply emotional unavailability or fear of intimacy, though these elements may be present. It's a sophisticated psychological architecture built on rational assessment of social dynamics, past experiences, and cost-benefit analysis. The Sigma has typically concluded, often with compelling evidence, that the vulnerability required for deep connection isn't worth the potential consequences. Consider Alexander, a brilliant systems analyst who maintains cordial but distant relationships with colleagues, family, and occasional romantic interests. His detachment isn't cold or cruel, it's carefully calibrated. He shares enough to facilitate necessary interactions, but maintains impenetrable boundaries around his deepest thoughts, feelings, and experiences. This selective vulnerability creates the illusion of openness while maintaining true psychological safety. This detachment becomes self-reinforcing over time. Each instance where the Sigma observes others' messy emotional entanglements or relationship disasters confirms his decision to maintain distance. Each superficial interaction that fails to penetrate his defenses reinforces his belief that few, if any, would truly understand his inner world if he revealed it. The Sigma's analytical nature compounds this challenge. He typically experiences emotions as data points rather than imperatives, interesting information to be processed rather than forces to be expressed or acted upon. This creates a fundamental disconnection from the emotional currency that drives most relationships, where feelings are shared, validated, and mutually influenced. Breaking through these walls requires something the Sigma rarely encounters: a combination of patience, perceptiveness, and persistence that can outlast his well-established defenses. The rare individuals who manage this feat typically share key Sigma traits themselves: emotional intelligence paired with respect for boundaries, insight without invasiveness, and an absence of need for conventional emotional validation. Perhaps, most crucially, breaking through requires the Sigma to recognize that emotional detachment, while offering protection, simultaneously deprives him of the most profound human experiences. This realization rarely comes through logical argument, but through moments of exceptional clarity, where the limitations of his chosen approach become undeniable. When this breakthrough occurs, it often happens not gradually, but in quantum leaps. sudden, shifts where the sigma chooses vulnerability despite every instinct for self-protection. These moments represent not weakness, but exceptional courage, as they require him to step beyond the operating system that has defined his existence and served him effectively in countless scenarios. Balancing freedom with connection. The ultimate challenge for the Sigma male lies in reconciling his fundamental need for freedom with the equally human need for meaningful connection. This balancing act represents not a problem to be solved once, but a dynamic tension to be managed throughout life. At its core, this challenge stems from the apparent contradiction between the Sigma's need for absolute autonomy and the interdependence that meaningful relationships require. Where conventional relationship models often demand compromise, shared decision-making, and mutual influence, the Sigma typically resists any structure that constrains his sovereignty. Take Jonathan, a successful author who values his ability to relocate at will, work according to inspiration rather than schedule, and maintain complete control over his environment. After several failed relationships, he discovered a partnership model that works, a committed but non-traditional connection with someone equally independent, where they maintain separate residences, finances, and substantial autonomy while sharing deep intimacy on their own terms. This example highlights a crucial insight. The Sigma doesn't necessarily have to choose between connection and freedom. He must instead reject conventional relationship templates and design arrangements that honor both needs. This requires exceptional self-knowledge, clear communication, and finding partners with compatible independence needs. The balancing process begins with the Sigma distinguishing between his essential freedoms and those he could compromise without. Core identity threat. Not all autonomy needs carry equal weight. Some represent fundamental requirements for his well-being, while others might be preferences or habits that could evolve without significant loss. Similarly, the Sigma must identify which connection needs are truly important to him versus those he might believe he should want based on social programming. Many discover that their actual connection needs are quite specific and focused, rather than conforming to conventional relationship expectations. This balancing act requires something challenging for most Sigmas. Ongoing, conscious attention to relationship dynamics rather than assuming they will maintain themselves with minimal input. The Sigma's natural tendency toward emotional self-sufficiency must be counterbalanced by deliberate investment in understanding his partner's experience and needs. Perhaps most significantly, successful Sigmas discover that properly structured connection doesn't diminish freedom, but enhances it. The right partner doesn't constrain, but catalyzes, doesn't limit, but liberates. This paradigm shift, from seeing relationship as a freedom reduction to seeing it as a capacity expansion, represents the ultimate evolution in the Sigma's approach to connection. Those who master this balance often create relationship models, as unique as they are themselves, arrangements that others might not understand, but that perfectly accommodate the specific freedom and connection needs of both partners. In this space of conscious design, rather than conventional conformity, the Sigma finally finds resolution to his core dilemma. As we've explored throughout these 8 chapters, the Sigma male's solitary path emerges not from social deficiency, but from a complex interplay of strategic choices, emotional architecture, value hierarchies, and purpose orientation. His aloneness is neither entirely choice nor entirely circumstance, but rather the natural outgrowth of an uncommon approach to life. The patterns we've identified, from strategic solitude to emotional independence, from value incompatibility to self-sufficiency, traps, create a perfect system for maintaining separation from conventional relationships. Yet understanding these patterns offers the first opportunity to consciously evaluate whether they continue to serve the Sigma's highest good or whether they've become limitations rather than strengths. For many Sigmas watching this video, the journey ahead involves not abandoning your fundamental nature, but rather evolving it, finding the delicate balance between preserving your essential autonomy while creating space for the connection that, as a human being, remains a biological and psychological need, regardless of personality type. This evolution doesn't mean conforming to conventional relationship models that would indeed threaten your core identity. Instead, it requires the creativity and independence of thought that Sigmas naturally possess, designing connection patterns as unique as you are, with carefully selected partners who enhance rather than diminish your freedom. The most evolved Sigmas discover that the right connection doesn't weaken but strengthens, doesn't confine but expands, doesn't diminish but amplifies. Finding this kind of connection requires exceptional self-knowledge, unwavering authenticity, and the courage to risk vulnerability when appropriate, all qualities the mature Sigma can develop without compromising his essence. As we conclude this exploration, I want to emphasize that there is no single correct path for all Sigma males. Some will indeed find their highest fulfillment in relatively solitary lives organized around their mission and purpose. Others will discover unconventional connection models that honor their need for freedom while satisfying their deeper human needs for intimacy and understanding. The key lies not in conforming to either expectation, but in making conscious choices aligned with your truest self. If you've found value in this deep analysis of the Sigma experience, I invite you to subscribe to Official Sigma Male now. Our channel offers continuing insights into the Sigma journey, from purpose discovery to emotional mastery, from optimal productivity systems to navigating the complex social landscapes that Sigmas must traverse. Your subscription supports our ongoing research and enables us to continue providing content that speaks directly to your unique experience, rather than offering generic advice designed for conventional men. Remember that your path as a Sigma male is both a privilege and a responsibility. The privilege of unusual freedom and the responsibility to use that freedom in service of your highest potential. Whether that journey includes partnership or not, the ultimate measure of success lies in the alignment between your choices and your authentic nature. Subscribe now to continue this journey of exceptional self-development.